righty. People are still joining in, but those of you that are already sure go into the chat. And Jane just posted the sign-in link for today. So go in and get those healthy lifestyle points for attending today's workshop. And we are just going to get started. So again, thank you all for joining today. This is a topic that is very also things that we do every day. And we just want to talk a little bit more about how we can effectively do that, as it's kind of a superpower that we all have. So just to introduce ourselves, I'm sure, again, you have heard us either on podcasts or workshops like today or whatever you've participated in. My name is Brittany Perry. I am one of the Healthy Lifestyle Coordinators. Sadie May is my partner in crime for Healthy Lifestyles. And we also have Jane, our health educator, with us today. Hi, Jane.
Hello.
And we're going to chat about effective communication. So hold on 1 second. Okay. So today for our presentation, we are going to have a lot of conversations. We want to make sure that we're actively engaged as we're talking about communication. We want to hear from you guys as well. So make sure that you have access to your chat. And if you don't, you have the opportunity to unmute yourself today as well. So before we get started, I do have a question for you guys. I wanted to ask, what is this month's healthy lifestyle wellness focus? And you can put it in the chat. First person that puts it in the chat will win some swag.
Lisa, she beat everybody. Occupational health, exactly.
Yay! Yep. Lisa, you are so right. This month, we are focusing on occupational wellness. And of course, with occupational wellness comes effective communication. So with occupational wellness, it's all about learning to find that balance between work and leisure in that way that promotes and improves our overall health and well-being. Of course, right? We're all trying to find that balance, but sometimes it's really hard. And so we wanted to focus on that this month. And of course, occupational wellness is found in so many different ways for each one of us, right? And activities as wellness is very specific to each person and our journey. So this month we have a ton of different activities for you to participate in. And if Jane, you'll put that link in the chat.
Yes, absolutely.
Perfect, thank you. This link is for all of the activities that we have going on this month, such as pickleball for tomorrow, hikes, walks, workshops, and a motivational speaker luncheon, which will be really awesome. We also have other things that you can do at your own pace. If you haven't heard of it before, it's called our #Kudos campaign. And what this is recognizing your fabulous coworkers, people who are around you every single day and you appreciate the work that they do, or maybe it's somebody that you've worked with in the past and you really wanted to recognize the work that they do. Submit their name in the #Kudos campaign. We also have an icebreaker card. So oftentimes we see that we're getting a lot of new coworkers currently, right? So getting to know those individuals on a personal level too is fun. So we have that icebreaker card that you can complete. And of course, everything has points attached to it. So as you are improving your occupational wellness, you also get the healthy lifestyle points, which is always a bonus. And last thing, we want to encourage you to participate in our healthy lifestyles activities, but of course, we do not expect you to complete all of them by any means. Please pick and choose what you feel necessary that is helpful to you during this month, right? Occupational wellness. What is it that you need help with to find that balance between life and leisure? So please pick and choose do not feel like you have to participate in everything. We like to call it a buffet style, right? Pick what you need and leave what you don't. So, for today's conversation, it is all about effective communication. And we're going to talk about how to be more effective in our communication skills, building trust in the workplace. And through building trust, it's how can we effectively communicate and how we can develop those healthy conversations, healthy relationships, and increase our workplace morale. And that's done through effective communication. So we also recognize that occupational wellness is, it recognizes the importance of the satisfaction, enrichment, and meaning through our work. So as we're achieving occupational wellness, there is that general definition, but it is also specific to each one. So take this general statement, but also try to define it on your own throughout the month through the different activities. What does occupational wellness look like to you when you find that balance? So for this next part, I have a question for you. Please put in the chat or unmute yourself. How does communication in the workplace affect our occupational wellness? Please feel free to put it in the chat. And then Jane, if you'll monitor that chat, that would be great.
Yeah, of course.
Again, the question, how does communication in the workplace affect our occupational wellness?
Lisa says it can create or alleviate stress depending on how thorough it is, for sure.
Definitely. And I like how you acknowledge two parts to it, right? It can affect us positively and negatively, depending on how well it is done, right? It can create that stress or clear that stress.
Yeah. Angie says, for me, not everyone communicates in the same way, for sure. That can be difficult.
Mm-hmm. And you hit the nail right on the head. We're talking about that exact thing today. Perfect. Yeah, I agree that sometimes when communication is done effectively, which we all hope, it can alleviate that stress, clear up problems, build that good relationship and a good, strong team. But sometimes, unfortunately, it isn't done effectively and it can cause a lot of stress, right? Because everyone's getting a mixed message. And so hopefully by the end of today's presentation, we're going to be able to understand a little bit better on how we can effectively do that while understanding where others may be coming from when they communicate as well.
Absolutely. Britt, we have a few more in the chat. Library, the county library services says, open communication alleviates misunderstanding and assumptions. And Laura says, if not done well, it can create feelings of isolation. If well, it increases engagement, for sure.
I love that. Thank you guys so much for sharing. So, we want to identify traits of an effective communicator, and it comes down to a few different items. And of course, effective communicators can have many different traits to them, but to mention a few today, they contribute to their workplace consistently. They are trusted by others. They can express themselves freely. They can make complex topics simple to understand. And they can also put their personality into their communication style, which I know for our Healthy Lifestyles team, it makes me giggle a little bit because all of our personalities shine through the way that we communicate. And it's fun to be able to talk to people when their personalities are shining through their communication. Because as we're going to talk about more, communication isn't just only what comes out of your mouth, right? That is a large part of it, but there's other pieces that work into that as well. So let's dive in a little bit more with the traits of an effective communicator. So, like I had mentioned, effective communication, I feel like as I was doing research and preparing to do this workshop today, it almost feels like a superpower because, like you guys said, when done correctly or when done effectively, I guess, we can get so many things done, right? It allows other people to trust us. It also allows us to express ourselves more openly, which is really, really cool. And we can get a lot of things done. So being able to effectively communicate can unlock so many opportunities for us, whether that's being able to manage a team or a project effectively with clear guidelines and expectations. We can also strengthen relationships, build strong teams, and so many more things. Um, if you guys can put in the chat, what are some other opportunities that effective communication can unlock for us? Again, what are some other opportunities that maybe you've experienced or you have seen when effective communication is done? What opportunities are unlocked?
Freedom to present new ideas. It builds trust and creates friendship. New growth opportunities, opportunities to connect, strong relationships that exist outside of the workplace. When there is good communication, it helps a department feel unified, for sure. All of these are so great because they really do, they're all side effects or byproducts of great communication within your own network of, your department, or maybe it's your bureau, or maybe it's your small little team of 5 individuals who really can create that space. There's another one that says create trust and the psychological safety, which I think is really important within a workplace too, just to feel like your ideas are valued and what you bring to the table matters.
For sure. I love that because as you guys read through and as you're putting that in the chat, I feel like that's how you would describe a superhero almost, right? That you have trust and respect and psychological safety and all of these other things. And we have the potential to offer all of these things to our workplace, our coworkers, our relationships, and our loved ones. And so effective communication is so important, not only within the workplace, but within our own personal lives as well. Thank you guys for sharing. So there are 5 basic communication skills that I want to talk about today to be able to unlock this full potential that we're talking about that we have within us. And of course, there's more than just 5, but for the sake of time today, I want to just talk about those 5. And of course, if you start recognizing that there's more as I'm talking, please feel free to put those in the chat as well. And Jane and I can stop and discuss those throughout today. So the first one is active listening. Practicing active listening is the key part to start this out. And I know it kind of seems counterintuitive to effective communication, but you're not talking, but you're listening. It goes hand in hand. So how many of us love to communicate with someone who only cares about putting their 2 cents in? Not I. When you're talking to somebody that only feels like they want to hurry and reply, or, oh, your experience was this, but let me tell you about mine, right? It's really hard to communicate with people that aren't good at listening, right? So it's hard. And on the other end of it as well, it's also hard to comprehend what we're being asked to do when we're too busy paying attention to what do I want to say next versus what the individual is actually saying. So take the time to be an active listener. We want to pay close attention to what the person is saying, and active listening is asking clarifying questions and also rephrasing what the person has said. So if they say something and you're not entirely sure what they meant, or if you're like, that came out a little wrong, I wonder if they meant something else, ask that clarifying question. And also, so the person feels like they're being heard. I found that this was interesting over WebEx and in person, right? We've all been back and forth from virtual to in person and back to virtual and then in person again. Being able to show that you're active listening over WebEx is sometimes a little different than in person, right? How I'm talking and Jane is shaking her head like, yeah, you can see that other people are listening by their body language that they're providing. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more. And also active listening allows for you to appropriately respond and act, right? If you didn't listen to what the person was saying and say they had told you something that was really important and they needed you to react a certain way, but then you just assumed that they said something else and you're like, oh my goodness, wrong reaction, right? We want to respond appropriately and act appropriately to what they said. Jane, did you have something you wanted to add?
I just think a part of active listening is exactly what you guys have done today is, you participate. Oftentimes you just think, oh, that's just participation, but being an active listener, you're able to respond because you've been listening. And so that goes all along with what Brittany was saying, but we appreciate the participation today because it's strengthening your skill of active listening. So thank you guys.
And also too, on the presenter's end as well, it's really nice to be able to hear from our participants. And I'm sure all of you have been on the other end as well, where you're sitting giving a presentation on WebEx and, you're not in person, so you can't necessarily see people's body language and it's kind of crickets, right? So it's nice both ways. So thank you guys. Second one, when we talk about communication, we often always think of what we're hearing or what we're saying out of our mouth. But what about nonverbal communication? Do we often think about that? And is that come into play of how we relay information? So nonverbal communication is your body language, eye contact, your hand gestures, and the tone of your voice. All of this plays a large part into what you're trying to convey. I always think of if somebody had something really exciting to say, like, for instance, oh my goodness, it's my birthday today, versus, it's my birthday today. Those are two very different messages, right? I'm really excited about my birthday versus, I'm not feeling it for my birthday this year. So that tone of voice is huge, especially with WebEx, because below the camera, I'm moving my hands, but you guys can't necessarily see that, right? So being able to adapt in your different situations with your body language, when nonverbal communication, when people can't necessarily see you, but they can hear you, what are they getting from that message? Because oftentimes when we present, people don't necessarily, sometimes won't remember what's been said, but oftentimes how you've made them feel. And so being able to match that and that comes from the tone of your voice and your body language. How did you make that person feel? Did they feel included? Did they feel happy when talking to you or listening to you, or, vice versa? So keeping that in mind.
You know who are great nonverbal communicators? Toddlers. They don't know anything. They have no, like, my son is just now being like, he's verbal, but he doesn't have the right words to say. He doesn't know what words mean what. but he's very expressive and he'll throw his hands and he'll like talk to me. And I want to listen because his voice fluctuates and he's exciting and it's so like, it's like if we could talk with as great excitement as when we were just starting to learn how to speak, like we could do some great things. And I think that's the thing is like if we want to be better communicators, how engaging are you? Think about what skills that you could, if you are more monotone, that's just the kind of individual you are, that's not a problem. But if you notice that it's putting people to sleep, think, what can I do to shake things up and be a little bit more engaging with my team?
Yeah, 100%. And start recognizing this. Start paying attention to it, right? Whether it's you that is presenting, or you're sitting in on a presentation like today even, or in your team meetings. Start recognizing who's hosting the meeting and how are they communicating with us other than just the words that they're saying, right? Do they have those nonverbal communication skills? Or is their tone fluctuating? Are they moving their body around? Are they standing in one place? All of these are parts of communication, and very effective communication. So start recognizing that and take like mental notes, or even write down some notes like, oh, I was part of a presentation. I really enjoyed this. Why did I enjoy it? Was the person fun to listen to? Check. Yes. Okay, what did they do that made it fun to listen to? And take that into your own practices as well. We learn so much from just observing people, right? People watching. And there's a reason why it's so interesting to do, is because it's that nonverbal communication. What are people saying about themselves when they're not talking? It's very, very interesting. So, next time you're in person or in the office, or even just talking to somebody, whether it's work or personal, take a split second and observe that. That's your challenge. Observe your own nonverbal communication as well. How are you standing? Are your arms crossed? Are you making eye contact, or are you staring off into the distance? Is your stance slouched? Are you like, whatever? Or are you like up and ready to talk? So take a split second and recognize your nonverbal communication as well. And a tip. So for positive nonverbal communication and body language, a relaxed, open stance with your arms open and your legs relaxed presents a more friendly tone. It will make you more approachable and it will actually encourage others to come and speak openly with you, right? What is your face saying? What is your facial expression? Are you sitting there with your face resting like this, arms crossed, right? What does that say? And personally, I think, well, if somebody's like this, sitting like this, and their arms are crossed and they're just kind of staring off, I don't necessarily feel like I want to approach that person and speak to them openly. So take that opportunity as an observation for yourself. Third thing that I wanted to mention, clarity and concision. So this is a huge part of just getting the word out. What do we want to say? Say what you want clearly and directly, whether you are speaking to someone in person, over the phone, or email. I laugh a little bit about this because when COVID started and we all went virtual for a little while, and then we've been back and forth virtual and in person, emails started to get longer and longer and longer, right? Because we're trying to explain what we're used to explaining in person, and it's a little bit different, right? Just make sure to be concise, to the point, right? You can address the email very nicely, but then just be very concise of what you're looking for, so that there's not any confusion, right? Over WebEx Teams, oftentimes, right? People can't read the tone of what you mean to read it in. So they put their own voice to what they're reading. So make sure that you're relaying a message that no matter how it's read in somebody else's voice or in your voice in their head, that it's clear and concise and to the point.
Brittany, we have a comment in the chat that is really noteworthy. So it says, I appreciate having a coworker that I can run potentially sensitive written communications by for feedback before sending. I think that's a great way. If you're unsure of its clarity and concision, run it past a member of your team before.
Definitely. And I think, even diving more into that, right? You have information that's going out to your team or your division or department, get a second set of eyes on it, because maybe what you don't necessarily pick up on, right? Because you read it in your own way, maybe somebody else might. So I love, love, love that you mentioned that. Getting that second set of eyes on it is very important. Thank you for mentioning that. I appreciate that. A tip, the last tip that I have for you for being clear and concise is think about what you would like to say before you say it. That's always just a good rule of thumb. Before immediately reacting, right? Immediately typing back on WebEx Teams, think about it before you send it. Always a good tip.
Sadie also says, if I want to get out of a conversation, perhaps with a salesperson or someone at a holiday party, I could do the opposite of these tips, winky face. So exactly. If you want to avoid effective communication at all costs, do not practice active listening. Act completely unengaged.
Bonus all the way around. Effective and non-effective.
Yeah, so if you know what it takes to be an effective communicator, you know what it takes to be an ineffective communicator.
Yes, ma'am. Last two tips that I have for you is have confidence in being open-minded. So be confident in your interactions with others. Confidence shows that you believe in what you're saying and that you're going to follow through with what you're saying that you're going to do. Showing that confidence in communication can be as easy as making eye contact with somebody or using a firm but friendly tone when talking. But of course, there's a fine line between confidence versus arrogant and aggressive. So we need to be able to find that line, right, where we are confident, but we aren't talking down to somebody, or we're not being aggressive in our communications. So be mindful of that as well. And being open-minded. A good communicator can enter conversations with a flexible and open mind, which allows you to listen to others respectfully. Sometimes we're part of really hard conversations that maybe we don't necessarily agree with, but having that open mind allows for others to be respected, but also that you're showing your self-respect and being able to have others openly communicate with you and being able to feel safe rather than you're constantly disagreeing and you're going back and forth. Having that open mind is a super big key. So be willing to be a part of a conversation that you may not agree with those people and what they're saying, but you can still have an honest and productive conversation if you have that open mind. Any questions or comments before we move forward? Okay. So we're going to dive a little bit into another aspect of effective communication is being able to understand your personality. So Jane is going to put in the chat a personality test. Now I'm going to give you guys a moment to fill out this personality test and answer it honestly. It's interesting what comes of what your answers are. So Jane's going to put that in the chat. And while I'm talking, please feel free to take this personality test. Okay. So while you're taking that, I'm just going to talk a little bit about our personalities. And once you've taken it, please put in the chat done. So another way for us to become better communicators is by understanding our own personalities. And that's why I'm having you take this personality quiz. And when we effectively communicate, our personality comes out in our tone of voice and our body language. So being able to do the 4 things is recognizing your values, recognizing and making changes of your personality, how you communicate with your personality, and knowing what you're passionate about. So I'm going to give us like 2 minutes, and then as the dones start filing in, we'll talk a little bit more about it.
Britt, do mute and unmute a few times. It was just, yeah, you're good. It was just a little Darth Vader-y.
Little Darth Vader-y. Thanks.
A little Anakin Skywalker. I love learning about personalities. I think it really helps you relate to people better and just understand people better. Maybe you give yourself a little bit more grace and you give other people a little bit more grace. It's so important.
Agreed. All right, again, make sure to put done in the chat once you've filled out this personality quiz. There's no wrong or right personality either. Let's start with that. And we'll talk about that as well. But don't feel like this is a test that's going to determine the rest of your life. And of course, our personalities change a little bit too. So you can always take this again.
Yeah, it goes against that notion of like, oh, this is just the way I am. I can't change. It's like, you can actually. You can change for the better or for the worse, but hopefully we're always changing for the better.
Exactly. All right. Continue to take those tests. So when we understand ourselves on a deeper level, such as our personality, right, as we're currently discovering at this very moment, it allows us to understand how we can take in the information that either we're trying to relay or other people are relaying to us, how other individuals impact us, and it also helps us become better versions of ourselves. Because when we do understand who we are, we're able to work on ourselves day in and day out, right? Hopefully each day we become better versions of ourselves. And this allows us to draw on our strengths. And this personality test will talk a little bit about your strengths and also your weaknesses. And read about that, because once we understand those strengths, we can draw on those, we can pull from those and share that with other people. And that's the really cool thing about our personalities and everyone's personalities is each person has their own strengths and each person has their own weaknesses. Where somebody may be falling short, we may be able to jump in and help with that one area where that is actually our strength. So being able to understand yourself on that deeper level, again, allows for better communication, because we can then communicate our ideas, our thoughts, and feelings in a more clear and concise way.
I feel like every workplace, like every team, should should take these tests, and not like you have to like hash out everybody's personalities, but maybe just say like, what values do you like? What are your top values? And that way you are more aware of what your teammates potentially need from you and what you need from your teammates. And so that it bridges that gap, and helps you become more effective communicators.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you guys should be finishing up on those.
Yep.
So
Done's.
Okay, perfect. So as you guys finish, you can see on the screen, I took a screenshot of what mine looks like, and this is what you're going to get as a result as well. So it breaks it down into a couple of different categories, which is really cool. And then it will show you, it kind of breaks down the different parts of your personality. So extroverted, introverted, intuitive, observant, judging, thinking, all of these different types of things. So please read about it. It's very, very cool. So moving right along, understanding people's personalities is really, really cool because we get to learn a little bit more about what makes us tick, but also what makes other people. And it's a very large, like what Jane was saying, it's a building block for effective teams and effective communication. What you offer may be different than what other individuals offer, but then at the same time, when everyone joins together at the end of the day, that builds for a really strong team. So being able to understand that is really important. It also encourages us to be more understanding of other people, where we understand our personalities. Maybe somebody else's is different, right? Of course, we hope that their personality is different, so we're not all robots. We want that diversity in personality, so it allows us to be more empathetic and more understanding. Now, again, like I had mentioned earlier, it's important to remember that not one personality or characteristic is better than another, right? We all bring different strengths, opportunities, and talents to the table. We are all unique and we all have important talents and skills to contribute. So please keep that in mind. And of course, if there's a personality trait of yours that you're like, man, I wish it wasn't necessarily like that. Like Jane had mentioned, good thing you can work on it, right? Good thing that if there is a goal that you want to achieve or change or whatever it may be, you have the strength and the opportunity to do that. So it also, being able to understand our personality, it allows us to celebrate ourselves and other people and our differences and appreciate what we offer, but also what other people's strengths are offering as well. And I just want to highlight that when we understand our personalities and when we're figuring that out, there are some key things that we want to make sure that we do. We want to understand ourselves, but also take time to understand other people. We want to provide respect, which also goes into providing that safe psychological space at work and at home as well. Avoid labeling and look for the good. Always assume that there is in that individual, even maybe if your personalities are clashing, right? That's okay. That's part of conflict. We always will have that in our life, but making sure that we look for the good, look for the positive, and draw on our effective communication skills so that we can build that sturdy foundation.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Britt. Don't you love Brittany? I wish I could have a little pocket-sized version of her, pull her out, put her on my desk, and have her give me like pep talks and, do dance moves or whatever. Like, she's just so great. But I think it's really important that we talk about personalities because we learn so much about our own communication styles and other people's communication styles by understanding personalities. So there are 4 main types of communication, and we're going to dive into some of the more helpful styles of communication and some of the more harmful styles of communication. And you can kind of internalize these things and decide for yourself what type of communicator you are. And hopefully by the end of this presentation, you can learn some skills to make you a more effective communicator. So there's 4 different types. We've got passive communication, aggressive communication. We have a combination of the two. We all have either been passive aggressive or have been on the receiving end of passive aggressive communication. And we all know that that can be harmful. And then we have assertive communication. So just a few things, passive communicators, they typically avoid confrontation. They they yield to others. They're a little bit more of soft speakers, and they go with the flow. So Britt, you can actually change the slide. Thank you. That's perfect. So yeah, so some example phrases of passive communicators. They often can say, "Oh, it really doesn't matter that much," or "I just want to keep the peace," and "only if you don't mind." So these example phrases of passive communicators, they definitely can, in the certain situations, passive communication is probably what's best, especially if you're dealing with someone who's a little bit more assertive or aggressive. It's nice to go with the flow, but you kind of pick and choose your battles when it comes to being a passive communicator. But all in all, it's important to just understand that you can be a different communicator in different situations. But always aiming to be, an effective communicator with whatever communication style you kind of fall under. So it's great to yield confrontation. It's great to go with the flow. It's great to be a soft speaker, but just recognize what you're doing and then try to be a little bit more clear and concise, or understand, a few of those things that we learned previously about effective communication. So those are just some examples of a passive communicator. The next one we have is an aggressive communicator. And aggressive communicators are often loud speakers and they take command. They struggle with listening to others. It kind of goes back to the example that Brittany shared where, they're quick to respond without really sitting with someone in their dilemma or their excitement or joy, whatever it might be. They're quick to share their feelings or opinions or thoughts. And then they command respect. So some example phrases of an aggressive communicator is, "I'm right, you're wrong." They deal in absolutes. "I don't care what you have to say. It's all your fault. And I don't agree with you, so I don't have to listen to your opinion." So those are very harsh, they're very harsh statements they point fingers and say it's all your fault. So again, aggressive communicators, anything with the word aggressive is probably not the best communication style to aim for, but we can give ourselves some grace and recognize where we fall and try to become more effective in whatever communication style. So then the next one we've got is passive aggressive. And these communicators often take out anger in subtle, indirect ways. They're aware of their needs, but they struggle voicing them. And I think that's the key here is individuals who are passive aggressive communicators, they want to be able to express their needs vocally, but they don't know how. So it's almost like they want to avoid confrontation, but in reality, it's creating confrontation because they're not capable of expressing themselves freely, clearly, and respectfully. So this often leads to silent treatments, deceitful behavior. Body language is often, eye rolls or just like straight face. They don't want to have that communication. So example phrases of a passive aggressive communicator, and I'm sure you guys can come up with your own, but for the sake of our hearts to not be frustrated and anxious, I'm just using these. When it says, that's fine with me, but don't be surprised if someone else gets mad, or fine. I don't know if you guys have ever watched The Italian Job, but fine always stands for freaked out, insecure, neurotic, and emotional. I always think of that whenever I say I'm fine. Like, really, you're not fine, but you just say that you're fine because it's easier than diving into how you actually feel. Another example phrase, just wondering, I'm not mad, but really you are mad. It's different to say I'm not mad when you're not mad, but it's another thing to say I'm not mad when you are mad. So mean what you say and say what you mean. And I think that kind of encompasses passive aggressive communication. And then the last type of communicator, which is what we are all striving to be, is assertive. Assertive communication is the most effective type of communication. So whatever you fall under, maybe you do fall under an aggressive communicator, or you are more of a passive communicator, or a combination of the two. That's okay. Just we can do things every day to become more assertive communicators. And that goes back to what those 5 things that Brittany said, where we are actively listening. We are picking up on nonverbal cues. We're being open-minded and respectful. And, we're doing things that are adding to this type of communication style, which is they're able to express their own needs and desires and ideas. They can do that clearly, concisely, and other people will be able to understand what those needs and desires and ideas are. They also, assertive communicators, consider the needs of others and the ideas of others. And they take ownership. This is incredible, to take ownership without blaming another person. Think about when you're working on deadlines for work, and you're waiting on so-and-so to give you something so that you can send it out. But, it's just like, take ownership without blaming the other person and say, I haven't received that yet, but as soon as I receive it, I will send it over to you. So you don't need to put the blame on someone else. Just take ownership for what you are doing, and you don't need to blame it. I also want to say, along these same lines, but let's turn it on the flip side, make it a more positive experience. So take ownership and give credit where credit is due. I think that's another aspect of an assertive communicator, where if I had a part in the project, but Sadie or Brittany or Brooke or Trudy, people on my team, Unhealthy Lifestyles, if they carried more of that load, give credit where credit is due. Let them know that you're grateful for what they did, and you're inspired by their work ethic. I think that's important. So some example phrases of assertive communication is, I feel frustrated when you are late for a meeting, or could you explain the reasoning behind your decision so I can try to understand? These phrases of I feel these I statements are powerful. And so when you're able to freely express, like, well, it's so frustrating when you're late for a meeting. It's like, I feel frustrated that you're late for the meeting. I feel like your time is more valuable than my time, when that's not true, right? So putting the I statements in front of something, it takes ownership, but it also lets the person try and understand. It's not a judgment statement. It's a frustration or an issue that you'd like to address with that individual. So that's great. And then, we can change the dialogue. We have that power. And I have mentioned this in the last several slides talking about the different types of communicators. But for myself, like, I would love to just say, I'm an assertive communicator. For sure, I'm assertive. But guess what? There are times when I'm not an assertive communicator, when I'm quick to put my 2 cents in, and I hate that about myself. Or I'm quick to say I'm fine when I'm really not fine. So it's all situational, but we do have the power to change that dialogue. And I think it's important to recognize we're human. Like, this is a part of the human experience. You gotta just allow others to recognize that you're human, and it's just all a part of that. You can recognize what you're doing, stop the conversation, apologize, and say, you know what, I need to just listen. I'm sorry for responding so quickly. Like, I want you to be able to express yourself the way you want to express yourself. So we can change that dialogue. And it goes against that grain of, like, you can change. And just because you fall victim to a less effective communication style doesn't mean that you cannot become a more effective communicator. And we want to be approachable, we want to be understanding, we want to be able to make hard things to understand simple to understand. We want to be clear, we want to be able to delegate tasks effectively within the workplace. And also, reach out to, when you understand that someone is struggling with their workload, reach out to them and say, I was serious about, like, let me know if you need any help. I want to help you because I know that your plate is full. So just being, recognizing that you can change that dialogue and you have the power to become a more effective communicator based off of the things that we've talked about today.
I also think, too, just to add really quick, is being, like you mentioned, just to reiterate, be open, but be honest as well. If you're trying a new communication style out, right? You're trying to, you've seen somebody, emulate a certain behavior and you really liked that and you thought that was positive because they got a good response, and you're trying to do the same thing. Be open and honest about it. Say, hey, I'm trying to communicate a different way. I feel like in the past maybe it wasn't as effective, so I'm trying something new. Be open and honest, because as you do that, other people will do that as well.
For sure. And no one's going to make you feel bad about that. And if they do, then they have issues of their own. So just know that you are doing your best to create a work environment that makes you feel safe, that makes you enjoy spending time with your coworkers. Like, communication is huge in that regard. There's been work environments where I haven't felt like I was able to express myself freely. And because of that, I felt anxious to go to work, or I didn't feel safe at work, or I felt like I was going to be attacked at work, which that's not what we want. And so some benefits of strong, healthy communication is, it, just like we said at the beginning of the meeting, it builds trust, it builds better relationships, your team becomes stronger, You enjoy going to work. Because you enjoy your work, your productivity and engagement at work increases, and you're able to solve those problems and you're able to handle those conflicts at work. It really just changes the entire experience within your workplace. And something that my mom always told me as a teenager is, I think being a teenager, it teaches you a lot about how to communicate and how to not communicate. Even though you're like a teenager, you are just, you're not fully there, but you're trying your hardest. And those are hard years. And when I was a teenager, my mom would always tell me, be a builder. And I think that goes along with effective and good communication, is that the words that we use, the words that we choose to say, they hold weight. And how we say them, or even if we don't say them, but our body language, or if we're not listening, or if we're not being open-minded, we can't build people up. And at the end of the day, that's what's most important, whether it's your target audience that you work with within the public, whether it's, mayor's finance, or you're working with the public at the library, or whatever that looks like for you. You're in management.
Jane, I think.
Oh no, she froze.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I could hear everything you said.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll keep going because we're just about done. And I think that Brittany will join on when she can again. But I just think it's important that you recognize that your communication style, whatever it might be, you can strive to be a better communicator, and you can be a builder within your workplace, whether that's at home, whether that's with your coworkers. You have that opportunity to find ways to build other people up. And I think it's also important to make a conscious effort of that. And one way we can do that this month is by nominating a coworker for Kudos. You can be a builder by, expressing your gratitude for what they do when it comes to furthering the work along in your respected area at the county. And just remember that communication works for those who work at it. Giving good, positive, powerful communication, it takes a lot of work. So like Brittany was saying, create that transparency with others and ask them to be patient with you while you work on improving that communication style. And let others know that you want to create an environment at work where you can be open, and open communication can thrive, and that trust can be built, and those strong relationships can be formed. So we just want to thank you guys for taking the time to spend this last hour with us, and we hope that you were able to find some form of encouragement when it comes to effective communication. So if you guys have any questions, please ask away.
Sorry, I think I lost you guys for a second.
Oh, no, you're fine, Britt. You're fine. I just finished up the slide, so no worry. Thank you guys for coming, and thanks for participating.
Yes, thank you guys. It was great to see you all and chat with you all.
Yes, yes, yes.
We have some people saying that they really love the personality test. Always feel free to read about it a little bit more. It was very interesting to read about myself a little bit, and I was like, oh yeah, that's totally me. And some others I was like, I don't know. But definitely interesting to always learn about ourselves a little bit more.
Yeah, it's a little bit vulnerable too when you see
It
the parts of
is.
yourself that you're like, yikes, I wish I wasn't so high in this area. But
Yeah.
you know, your weaknesses can become your strengths, I guess.
So true. So true. Well, awesome. Thank you so much, Jane. You're fabulous.
Thank you. That was a lot of fun. I think they definitely got to see our personality a little bit more.
Definitely.
Awesome. All righty. Chat with you
Awesome.
later. Bye.
Thanks, guys. Bye.